Hello, my name is Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 8, Episode 4 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on May 5th, 2025. And we're about to hop right into this. So I forgot to pour the beer. So while I'm sitting here babbling on, I've also got to pour the beer, which is a wonderful thing to have to do all at once as you hear the thing. But we're going to be talking about Bombshells, My Caramel Romance, on a episode where we're talking a little bit about music and 3D printing and stuff like that. So we thought it would be apropos. So let me get your glass there, Ricky. And this is a 6.6% ABV porter. It's supposed to be a caramel porter. It's a very dark beer. And let's see, what else can I say about it? It is very, very reminiscent of My Chemical Romance's first album and the way that they kind of like did the graphics on it. It is a North Carolina's first owned Bombshells, North Carolina's first women-owned brewery, and they don't really have much else to say about it, so we'll just get right into tasting the beer, what Ricky thinks about it.
It's a good porter. I mean, it's not bad. If I ordered it at a bar, I'd drink it. I may not get a second one, but I'd drink it. It's not offensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think for something coming out with like a lot of caramel in the name, not as much of a caramel flavor as I would like. I mean, it's there, but if there was that level of caramel in just any porter, you just handed me a porter, I would not say this is something you advertise as caramel.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Now I haven't tried it heated up. I had a 4-pack of these. I've had like 2 of them. I think there's still one in the fridge because I shared it with a friend. But it is not what I kind of expected for it to. Now, if you let it set on your tongue at the end, while it's sitting there, there is a caramel aftertaste. Like if you get like some buttered caramel, and you have that, and you let it melt in your mouth, and you have a little bit left in there, like on your teeth or something like that, you do get that aftertaste, and that's not normal for a porter. But it is more of like a hint of an aftertaste of caramel when it's cold. Let it set and get warm, and we'll see what happens. But as of right now, while it's cold, it's a good porter. If you like porters and stouts and things like that, this is a good beer to get. It's not a bad one. Are you getting it just for the, you're a fan of My Chemical Romance and you kind of want something that like ties into that while you're listening to I'm Not Okay? Okay, yeah, sure.
Maybe that's a stretch. That's a 1%, not even 1% generous. Like 0.01% of people are going to ever have that thought.
Exactly.
Maybe less than that.
Are you buying it just because it's a caramel beer? Probably not.
No, and because I like porters. Porters are one of the beers that like I'll consistently get. I like a porter. I like a stout. I like the darker beers. I would think I'd struggle to justify to myself to buy a 4-pack of this. What I would do though is if I was gonna have like a party and I want a selection of drinks, I think it's good to put in a rotation.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's good enough to be like the thing I stock, but if I want to give people a choice of like multiple dark beers, I might grab like, a Dragon's Milk, and I might drag, maybe like an oatmeal stout, that's got like some creaminess to it, or like a milk stout or something like that. And then I'd be like, okay, this is a fairly traditional stout with a little bit of like an interesting aftertaste, and at a party having the My Caramel Romance thing could be like people would like that.
Yeah.
There's a vibe to it.
Well, so I agree. My Caramel Romance, beside like Sam Smith's oatmeal stout, that's not a bad beer pairing. If you were like swapping them back and forth, and you had to choose between the two because they're about equal in like their like craft, kind of like setup. If we were talking about having it be a between a Dragon's Milk and this, I'm getting a Dragon's Milk every time.
Yeah.
Just no two shakes about it. Now, I don't really have anything else to say about the beer until we let it warm up a little bit, so I'm just going to move on to printing useful things or 3D printing useful things. So originally, you thought that this was going to be about 3D printing useful things for your 3D printer.
Yes.
Because I kind of showed you some stuff that I'd done for my 3D
Mm-hmm.
printer. But I just mean in general, making things that aren't for decoration. Because I've made a bunch of those. Over Christmas, I printed out a whole bunch of 3D printable things that, mermaids for my kid, because she really likes mermaids. And then my other kid likes Nightmare Before Christmas, and I printed them some,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that was, based off of that, some Lilo and Stitch stuff, things like that that are questionably licensed, but
Yeah, yeah.
still kind of neat. Um, but then I started looking at stuff that's more like, what are some like useful things that you can do? Now at Christmas, I did arguably print some like ornaments and stuff like that. And the stuff that I'm printing it on is not like really meant for outside. It's kind of like inside stuff, and it's more like light use stuff. But you make something out of PLA or PLA plus, um, and you get it set up and everything like that, and you can do all sorts of like really neat things that are fairly useful, and they're not like just or waste
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So the first thing that I printed was a little bin to catch all the little dribbles that come out of my 3D printer. I have a Anycubic um, Cobra Neo 2, and I mean, it's a good starter filament printer.
Yeah.
I've also got another Anycubic that's a resin printer that I've never used. Because after I got the resin printer, I was like, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of, like resin minis.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, in my haste and excitement that I had made a error, because that is very toxic and I don't have a place to put it.
Yeah, to ventilate it.
Yeah, so I've got to like get a whole ventilation set up. I can't do it up
Mm-hmm.
here in my office. I'd kill myself. I can't do it downstairs in the living room. I'd probably kill the dogs. I can't do it, in the garage, because that's like kind of not set up. It's a little bit too dirty,
Mm-hmm.
So like it's just, I don't have a good place for it. So it's just been sitting downstairs. I'm gonna buy an enclosure, set it up, and then put a ventilation in one of the spare bedrooms and have that vent out one of the windows.
Yeah.
But until then,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing filament printing. So last year I bought a filament printer, and I've been having a lot of fun just printing random things on it. But then comes in Gridfinity. And so there's this guy, he runs his own YouTube channel, and I have forgotten his name suddenly. But he came up with this idea, basically, that you have a grid. And I'll look it up while you're talking about your thoughts on this. But the grid is basically anything you want. It could be a 5 by 5 square. It could be a 15 by 15.
Mm-hmm.
You could have it like set up for IKEA shelves. You could have it set up for whatever. And you make them, and then you make these little boxes that go on top of it. And the boxes can hold anything. You can make a box that holds a chicken drum if you like 3D print out the spacer for it or whatever. But you can use that to do useful things, to store things, to organize things. To you could, he made a Gridfinity rotating tray that you could set up. There's Gridfinity camera mounts. There's all sorts of things like that. But basically, you set these things down inside of it, and it kind of like locks it in place so that it stays in a location. But anyways, your thoughts on the things that I'm kind of laying out there as examples of useful 3D printing versus things that are just kind of how should I put this? They're not necessarily useful. They're more more for decoration. They're useful in a in the sense that they are beautiful, or something that's neat to have, but they're not like useful in the sense of practical use.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think 3D printing is a really fun thing that people have access to now. We don't have a 3D printer, but we do occasionally go to like libraries and workspaces that have them, and like watch people print stuff off. It's a great way, I think, to tackle a situation I think everybody's been in where they're like, I just want a little trinket. Like, wouldn't it be cool to have like this little cheap toy that did this? Or even the useful things, like, wouldn't it be great to have a bunch of little mini storage things? And you go to some place like Amazon, and there's ultimately some factory in China that makes it, and you buy 100 of them because they only sell in packs of 100 because they're small little plastic things, and then you don't need the other like 95. That's happened to me so many times. Of I just want some little tool to help organize my office, or like my mother loves to buy little plastic toys for my daughter, like little things that she had when she grew up, like the little twirly birds and stuff like that. And you can't buy one twirly bird. You buy a pack of 100, and 100's the small pack. So now I've got in my house all these like 100 pack of toys that we've used 3 of them in that are just sitting in a big box in my house. When like if you got a 3D printer, I'm sure you can 3D print twirly bird, no problem.
You can 3D print stuff like
you
that.
Can 3D print like a little monkey that will hang off of another monkey.
Yep.
To make little stacking toys and stuff like that. And sure, maybe those things are not objectively useful, but for the amount of cost and effort after setup, it's better for the environment that I'm not shipping 100 things directly from a factory in China. It's probably cheaper to me to just pay for some filament than, sure, you've got the setup cost of the device, but once you get it and once you're printing stuff, everything after that is pretty much cheaper. You can customize it. Like the little pack of twirly birds comes in like 5 colors, and she really likes one particular color better than others. I could just print.
Yeah.
You can do a little rainbow pattern if you want with your little rainbow filaments and stuff like that. It definitely fills, I think, the void in people to have like a little thing. I think people, as we evolved from more base animals, still love our little things. You want your little resource that makes you happy. And 3D printing is a really cheap, cool way to get that, because you can get kind of exactly what you want. If it breaks, it doesn't matter because you just make a new one. And I think the only thing I wish with 3D printing, and maybe this is the thing and I just don't know it, is if you could just recycle the materials a bit better.
You can recycle them. There are ways to do it. That is a much more involved process and requires more specialized stuff.
Like you can't really turn it back into the spool, but it would be cool though.
Well, you can.
Not without the equipment though.
Yeah, but you have to have that equipment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're not just gonna sit at home and like melt it in a pot and be like, all right, now I'm gonna strain it up.
Now I'm gonna strain it through.
But someday, and it's cool stuff. I know they're doing metal 3D printing now. I know that's super expensive, but that's also kind of a cool idea because that is something you could like immediately, like if you're doing pewter, like sure, yeah, just go melt the pewter back down. Now you've got put it in the right shape and boom, you've got your pewter again. Because I knew some people that did pewter crafting in Asheville.
Yeah,
and that was always fun. They'd make a bunch of stuff to practice and just melt it back down such a low melting point you can just do it at home.
Yeah, tin, pewter. I mean, you can basically have your. I know a guy who has a little blacksmith forge that he keeps in his backyard, and that's a neat thing. So you can buy filament that has metal, and you can buy filament that has carbon fiber in it. So and both of those things, they require special nozzles.
Yeah.
So, but you can do them on a regular 3D printer. You don't have to have like.
Yeah, but you can't then melt it and put it back into the wire. You still got specialized equipment.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm saying like someday we're gonna get a 3D printer that like will print metal and just have like a heated basin. It's got like a little forge in it. So like you can just dump scrap metal into it and it'll melt it and then do what it needs to do.
I imagine that at some point someone is going to be able to take. Be able to combine a system that will take all of your leftover, and scrap stuff that you had to do. Because one of the things that comes with 3D printing is when you're trying to figure out what your thing should be or what I moved my 3D printer from up here down into another bedroom. When it was up here, it was great, but it kind of took up a lot of space in my walkway of my office. It could have fit somewhere in my office, but my office really isn't set up for that.
Yeah.
So I moved it downstairs, and in moving it downstairs, it works perfectly, but I had to figure out where to put the filament dryer that I keep my filament in when it's printing. And so I broke a bunch of filament, and when I was printing these Gidfinity boxes that I have, there was a lot of, okay, well that broke.
Yeah.
It stopped working because the filament box got yanked up to the 3D printer.
Mm.
So like I had to stop it. Okay, start over again. Let me readjust the position of the box, see if that
Yeah.
works. Let me readjust the filament spool within it, see if that works. And ultimately, I found one that would work,
Mm.
right? But that said, I think 3D printing is right now. It's kind of in its um, so it went from its infancy where it was really hard to get into,
Yeah.
and now it's in a place, or it was really hard to figure out how to do it. It wasn't that hard to get into. It was just really hard to like kind of figure out how to manipulate the models, how to do things
Yeah,
like
but
that.
I mean, I think that's the same thing. I think you're right. There was a lack of public good education on how to do it.
Right, and also the tools were not as easy to use. It was kind of like you know having to figure out how to format by hand a JSON file instead of getting it spit out by something like Python, which is a much easier, like way of pushing that information out to it. There were people who were just there that were like, I'm a nerd and I figured this out.
Yeah.
And, I've been playing with this and stuff like that. And, I know how to make like the XY axis of this work, but like a normal person was just like, what do you mean? Like it has to be a reverse void to be able to work or something like that, and then there's the whole like accurate measurements and stuff like that, which there's still a bit of that comes with 3D printing, but now there's so many models available, so many people are out there, and they figured out like how to solve a lot of the problems that come along with 3D printing. So now you can get something. I'm going to talk about Bamboo Labs for a minute. I don't suggest that anyone gets a Bamboo Labs printer. I've never owned one. I've seen that they are really amazing printers. They go more closed source, and they are locking people into having to buy their filament spools and stuff like that, and like not being able to modify your printer the way you want it to. That just, for something that's supposed to be so open and everything like that, it just kind of irks me the wrong way.
Yeah, that's a step away from someone them eventually like checking to see what your model is and being like, nope, that's a Disney character.
Yes, exactly.
Like that's a slippery slope of it's just gonna turn into like a bunch of these printers where it's like you gotta have my ink and no aftermarket ink, and
yes,
we're putting little things in the bottom, and you didn't renew your subscription, we turned your printer off remotely, and like all that crap.
It's the exact same sort of thing. So I don't want to promote them.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about them for a moment, in that you can basically just set it up, and then it's set up so you have it in its own enclosure. It heats everything up. It does all the thing. It collects the little, waste poops, and those go into a little bin that's in the back of it. You take it out, you throw it away. It's almost like a coffee machine at that point. You put your file in, and it'll just create it for you.
Yeah.
And it ventilates everything like it's supposed to. You can buy the little nozzles for it for the different materials. It really is kind of plug and play at that point in time. And there's a lot of systems like that. Prusa has one. Anycubic's developing one. They've even got them where if you've got multiple colors and you want to have multiple colors within a 3D print, it'll automatically do the multiple colors. You just tell it which one's red, which one's blue, which one's green.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome. So 3D printing more accessible, and going back to the practical topic, 3D printing very practical. These cable organizers. So since I got my office, we're sitting here and we're looking at this mess of cables that I have in here. So a bunch of cords and USB cables. I have them all organized into what type of cable they are, but I have these big buckets of stuff. I need something that is more granular.
Yeah.
I can put them in. I know what I've got. I can label it. I can even have the label on the box so that, like, if the label will never come off, that's a perfect thing for 3D printing to solve. And that's what this Gidfinity kind of does. By the way, Gidfinity, made by a guy named Zack Freedman. He runs his own YouTube channel. I've forgotten the name of the YouTube channel now. But if you look up Zack Freedman, and I'll put a link down in the comments, thing about it. So Zack Freedman's channel. He's amazing, funny guy. He's 3D printed his own headset so that he can have his teleprompter in front of him when he's doing his episodes and stuff like that. It's a really funny thing. You should check it out if you're into 3D printing. Um, you got anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Let's talk about the Hiby M300 versus an iPod versus the Mechen H1. So I, I'll go over what they are, and then I'll let you give your impressions, because I've been playing with these things for a while, and I'll
Okay.
talk about them. Everybody knows I mod iPods, iPods, and we're talking about classic iPod classics. I basically take the hard drive out and I'll put a SSD or a micro SD card inside of it. I'll replace the screen if it needs a replacement, put a bigger battery in it. I've got a USB-C mod that I'm going to do sometime, but that requires a lot of effort to
Yeah.
put in. I've soft modded them. I've put a MagSafe on them so that the MagSafe's inside, and you can just like stick it on a MagSafe or like hook a wallet to the back of it or something like that. These devices are really neat, but the kind of thought of this is something like around the same amount of money that you would spend to buy and mod an iPod, the Hiby M300. Is that better quality? It can run streaming apps. It can do things like run a local um, you know list of music just like an iPod can.
Hmm.
It has Bluetooth. It has like all the stuff like aptX and stuff like that. It's an Android player. It's got a little touch screen on it, so it's very intuitive navigation. So is that worth getting over an iPod, or is something that's less expensive, less than $100? I don't know, with tariffs and everything like that, the prices on these things to get will change a little bit.
Hmm.
But modding an iPod costs $150 to $200 depending on what you're doing, what you're modding it, and buying the base iPod. You could spend more than that. You could spend up to $300-400 if you're doing like a whole bunch of like stuff.
Hmm.
And there's some pre-built kits and stuff like that. The Hiby M300 is about $200 right now. I think it's like $199, and then you have to pay for shipping. And the Mechen H1, I think I paid 35-40 bucks for it. I can't remember. I
Yeah.
bought it off AliExpress, just like I bought the Hiby M300. Now, you've had some experience with all three of these. You listen to music on them.
Hmm.
You had your thoughts at the time when you listened to music on them. Do you remember which one you preferred?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, when we're talking just music, I did prefer the iPod. Like, you made a very good comment at the time of something that some people prefer the more like warm richness of the iPod versus the more like true sound of the other two, and that's a good call out. I love bass. If This is why I'm also so particular with my headphones. Like, if I don't get a really good bass out of a headphone, I just don't want it. So like the nice combo of a good headset and the iPod, it's a really great listening experience. But you are right; these other two devices offer additional features. They're Bluetooth. They can do other things other than just music. I don't think at the time we talked about like the streaming apps and stuff like that, but that's also really cool because that's how I listen to most of my
Yep.
music. I think for me personally, if I had access to a lot of local media, which I don't because I do stream most of my music, I would probably pick that iPod every time. But if you're in a situation where like, maybe Spotify is your main thing you listen to music with, or like YouTube Music or something of that nature. I don't know, I'm having a hard time saying it. I really like the way the iPod sounds. The other one definitely is more useful. So maybe if you stream all your music and also you don't need the bass dialed up to 11 constantly, then you should definitely go with one of the other two. Um, but I don't know. For me, yeah, I do think it's the iPod because I've got you gave me an iPod for Christmas that I've not listened to a ton, but that's just 'cause I haven't had a lot of time for music this year. But like I do listen to it, and
Hmm.
like just with the preloaded songs, I haven't gone and had anything myself, but like I probably should because I've got some trips coming up. I either need to do that or I need to get a better set of headphones. In fact, we're probably gonna. I'm gonna pitch you an episode idea right here live during this episode,
Okay.
episode Inception. Um, we maybe need to do another round of like headphone testing
Oh yes.
because my dogs finally destroyed my Surface headphones. They were going anyway,
Okay.
but it was just like they now snapped it at the head, so like the ears are gone, and now you can't even wear them. So it's like I do need another pair of headphones soon.
Okay, so we'll do that. That'll be our
Hmm.
episode. We'll record that the next time we record.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll do that because that'll give you time to get some. But you could also just borrow a pair of my headphones and carry them with you. I mean, I have like 60 pairs of
Yes,
headphones,
you
and
got it
some of
going.
them you really like a whole lot. So you
Hmm.
could borrow some of my closed back headphones and like take them on the trip, see which one you like. I so I think coming back. Oh, okay, well, on the topic of the headphones, just to
Hmm.
finish that, yes, we will definitely do that. I got you, man. um, when it comes to the Hiby M300 versus the iPod versus the Mechen, positives for the iPod. It doesn't send me any notifications or stop my music playback when
Yeah,
someone calls me on the phone.
that's valid.
It doesn't affect my ability to listen to stuff when I am trying to chill and just listen.
Hmm.
It has a great DAC for lower powered headphones. That Wolfson Audio DAC in the there's two different models of iPod. The iPod Classic 6th and 7th gen, the one that you have, has a different DAC than the Wolfson Audio, but they're really close. Now, some
Hmm.
people prefer the Wolfson, some people prefer the Amlogic, I think is what the other one is. I I can't really tell you which one I like better. They do sound a little bit different to me.
Hmm.
One of them's a little bit warmer, almost like vinyl, and one of them's a little bit more crisp, like CDs. But and the Wolfson is the warmer one.
Yeah.
But still, like they're good. I like the sound of CDs. I like the sound of vinyl. I like them in their context.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I prefer to pull out my 7th gen iPod and listen to that. But the one that I listen to the most for nostalgic reasons is my. I bought a 30 gen iPod when they first came out, a 30 gig 5th gen iPod when they first came out, and I just listened to that thing all the time. I had it set up in my car, like everywhere I went,
Hmm.
had it full of music. So I've modded. That's the one I modded to have 2 terabytes in it. It's not the most stable iPod I have. Sometimes it'll crash because it's not meant to have 2 terabytes in it. I think about 512 to a terabyte is like the perfect zone for
Hmm.
these things. But man, just holding it, it makes me feel, you know, younger. So
Yeah.
there's a nostalgia factor there too. Getting music on it still supported on Windows and Mac. You can put it on Linux. Like there's a lot of stuff, and then you have custom firmwares for it. So the iPod is extensible. It is able to be modded. You can tinker with it. If you don't want to tinker with it, you can just plug it in, put music on it, go with
Hmm.
it as it's meant to. Downsides to the iPod: doesn't have streaming apps. Is older hardware. That means that you have to replace batteries and stuff like that. Can be a bit of a pain to get into, and it is, for all intents and purposes, probably eventually not going to be supported, on iTunes and stuff like that. So you'll have to like find workarounds for it
Yeah.
eventually. That said, I gave a long list of positives and a smaller list of negatives
Yeah.
that I can think of. On the other hand, looking at something like the Hiby M300, we haven't even gotten to the Mechen yet. The Mechen is
Hmm.
the cheaper one. The Hiby is the more expensive one. The Hiby has a really beautiful interface. It has a beautiful music app that was made by Hiby. Has all sorts of like custom presets for listening to music and setting up headphones, like aptX and
Hmm.
different dynamic profiles for like bass, less bass. You can set up your own EQ. You can run it through another DAC, just like you can the iPod, but this one is set up specifically to be able to do that. So you can basically line out to a DAC. It has a more powerful amp in it, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's a little bit more powerful. So it can run slightly, and I do mean slightly, more resistant headphones that need a little bit more powerful, a
Hmm.
little bit more power. But the Hiby, um, like like I said, if you run your own media server, you can listen to music on it, like Jellyfin or Plex. You can listen to music on it through like Plexamp or Finamp, I think is the main thing for Jellyfin. I think MB has one too, but I'm not sure. You also have subsonic apps and stuff like that. You could just put your music directly onto it. That's how I prefer to listen to my music on it. It's small, so it's smaller than a phone.
Mm-hmm.
USB-C, so you don't have to worry about a 30-pin connector, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it runs a modern version of Android 13. I don't know if it's going to get 14, but at least does that. It'll also take a micro SD card, so you can increase the capacity of it fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, is there anything else I can think about? I mentioned the Bluetooth. I mentioned all of those other things. So you get wireless headphone coverage. Negatives for it, just like kind of looking at it. These could be negatives or positives for you. Negative, it's always connected. Like you turn on the wireless, you can turn it off, of course, but it gets notifications. Once you sign into your accounts for whatever Google, the Hiby store, whatever, you're going to get notifications. It's basically Android collects information about you and sends it off to people for marketing or statistics or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's going to do that whenever you connect it up to wireless. Transferring music to it's a little bit easier than the iPod because it can use wireless or wired connection where iPod can't. So I forgot to add that as like one of the positives. It costs about the same as modding an iPod and buying one now in the modern day. It's got more flexibility. I think would be the negatives though. It doesn't have as big of a battery built into it. You can't like really take it apart and service it very easily. Where it, I did mention that the iPod is hard to take apart. It is hard, but it is easier than most other little small electronics things. It was built with the idea of taking it apart and servicing it, or I think it was. The way it's built. The Hiby is, it is Android, like I said. So it's got the quirks that come with Android. It's also not super powerful. So like sometimes when you're swiping stuff, it'll kind of lag as it moves back and forth between things. In the Hiby Music app, it's just fine. Once you're in something that works, it's just fine. But it doesn't like necessarily like if you're moving between apps or something like that. And sometimes in Spotify, it'll like kind of, you swipe up and it'll scroll up slowly behind you. I don't know if that's a setting or if that's like just because it's a lower processor that's in it. So it's not, you're not getting like a Snapdragon Gen 2 in this thing.
Yeah.
I think, I'm probably about neck and neck for positives versus negatives that I've said so far. But it's a little music player. The question is, why wouldn't you just use your phone? Because your phone can do everything that the Hiby can, plus make phone calls and stuff like that. The answer is, you can actually turn off things on the Hiby to make it so that you do have an almost equivalent experience for the most part. There are still some notifications that you'll get, but to an iPod.
Yeah.
So you can kind of disconnect yourself like you would with an iPod.
Yeah, which is I think the reason to get a separate music player anyway.
Right.
Like I'll put my phone on Do Not Disturb, which helps some, but it's not perfect. At that point, I think you're right. I mean, if you're a person that maybe still prefers like a lower tech phone, but yeah, I mean, I struggle with if for everything other than notifications, why wouldn't I just use my phone?
Right.
But that's a good call out. You do want to be able to disconnect sometimes. Sometimes you just want to go on a walk and you don't want to receive a phone call and you don't want to get an email and you just want to do your 30-minute walk and you want to go home and that's where your 30 minutes.
Exactly. And maybe you don't want your, iPod to go with you on that walk. Maybe you're, treasuring it. So you want something that gives you an equal experience.
It's cheap and easily replaceable. I mean, that's okay.
Well, it's not cheap, but it's more easily replaceable than the iPod.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it was like $100, right?
No, that's the Mechen.
Oh, the Mechen.
We're talking
okay.
about the Hiby M300. It's about $250.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, not cheap, but you're right. But more easily replaceable. And I think that's the big thing because if you break your iPod, you're going to be paying a similar-ish amount of money, but it's a lot more manual labor.
Right.
You know, it's that plus the effort. Whereas, you know, get, I'll even say like if you're getting it online, a lot of places will let you just get like a little insurance plan if you're worried about it.
Yep.
Pay the extra $20 and they'll replace it within 2 years if you drop in the lake or something.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the Mechen.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mechen plays music. You can put it on there via wireless or wired. It'll also accept micro SD cards. It uses the same Hiby app that the Hiby M300 does. The Mechen, I don't know if they're made by the same company, but it's called the Mechen H1.
Mm-hmm.
It's less than $100. It's a little white device. Has all the same things, except it is running Android 3.1.
Okay.
So it's not going to run Spotify.
Yeah.
It's not going to run PlexAmp. It's not going to run FinAmp or anything like that. Anything that you can get downloaded onto it that will run on Android 3 or newer, we'll work on it, which is not really a whole lot.
Yeah, not a lot at this point.
But you can get things like, I think there's a couple of music apps that still work on it. You can install some of the alt stores on there and stuff like that. But like Google Play isn't going to work on there and stuff like that. And it's really meant to be an offline player.
Mm-hmm.
So really the deal is you can put your own local music library on there, you know, have like 512 gigs of storage because it comes with like, I think 8 gigs on the device. So you need a micro SD card on it. And it performs okay. It's got the same problems with like being a little sluggish sometimes between menus. I tried to install things like Spotify and stuff like that on it. The process to get that to work is infuriating. I don't suggest trying to do it. I haven't tried to mod it to have like a different Android operating system on it.
I know, I was about to say, okay, spin up a VM, put a modern version of Android on the VM, and
yeah. Well, you can. There are things like Lineage OS and stuff like that. I don't know if any of those would run on this. You can just install them on a lot of things. I mean, like I run Graphene on a Google Pixel 6a, you know, stuff like that. You can do all that stuff possibly with this, but it's a tinkerer's world if you wanted to try to do that. I haven't done it. I don't know. The positive is you can listen to your music offline, and it has like a fairly okay DAC in it, and it's not very expensive. So if you wanted something to give to a kid to let them listen to it, there's cheaper things than this, and I probably would get one of those. If you want something to listen to your music at high quality, spending like $40 more, you could just buy better, you know, device.
I think that's the real double-edged sword if you're doing it just for quality of music, because at that point, yeah, you need a good player. So spend the $40. Your headphones are probably $200.
Yeah,
you know, like what's the 40 in the grand scheme of like, if you're going for really, really good audio quality, it's a $400 to $500 total setup anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly. So
10% of your budget to it not be terrible, that's kind of worth it.
I kind of don't know why anyone would buy. I bought it just to
play
compare,
around with. Yeah.
To compare. So that's the only thing I can think of. You want to have something that you can say, this is not good, this is good. Well, I want it to be better than this.
I think there probably is something to be said about the price point of the like. If you can't afford the $400 or $500 setup, and you really are down to the $40 matters, this at least still gets you somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you could get some. So you know, on a budget, I've done a whole like budget setup, and maybe we'll do like a thing where we talk about that. But you could get some of the AKZs, or I mean, even some of the you know, like Moondrops or something like that. They're under like $40. The ones that I bought you for Christmas. Yeah, they were not super expensive. The pair that I carry around with me all the time, you know, like $30, and then you buy this, so you're in it in the whole thing for under 100. Plus, you got to get a micro SD card. So let's say 120. You're in the whole thing for under 120. Okay, I could see that. You know, I don't know, man. I there's other things that I would probably buy a used iPod before I bought this. Just because it's roughly the same effort to put stuff on it. And I actually think I had a harder time getting music onto this than I did an iPod.
Mm.
So
That's a good call out.
yeah. I don't know. I take from what you will from this whole thing. You prefer the iPod. I prefer the iPod. I do have a use for the Hiby M300. Um, but we're going on a trip here pretty soon for work.
Yep.
While we're on that trip, I'm going to bring all this stuff with me, and we can just sit around and in the evenings listen to music and mess with stuff and tinker with it and see what's happening. Because I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how much time we'll have to do that, but I imagine we'll have like at least 1 or 2 nights to do it.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Anyways, do you have anything else to say about that?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. The last thing I'll say is overall pick iPod. If you don't want to go down the harder path, do the do the Hiby. Definitely don't get the Mechen H1. Let's talk lastly about something that we kind of hit on in this disconnecting in the moment. And I followed up the iPod versus Hiby with that because I've been thinking a lot about the intentionality of interacting with things. So I'm pretty outspoken about saying music, games, they are not necessary for life. Now, they enhance one's life. So I think that they have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they're valueless.
Yeah, but they're good entertainment, but you're right. That's a want, not a need.
Right. The value that we put on them sometimes is more than food or air, or stuff like water. And that's because a lot of those things are more commoditized at a greater level, so it's easier to get those things.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think about like how important it is to have those things. And so we kind of like, so just explaining my viewpoint on that, because I may say something in a moment that kind of might seem contradictory, but I'm looking at it from that perspective.
No, and you're 100% right. Once something becomes a commodity, it does lose a lot of perceived value. Like, I was listening to a great little podcast that was talking about like preserving food and how like salt was a strategic resource for most of human life. Like, everyone knew where they were getting their salt, because for a very long time that's the only way we knew how to really preserve food long term. And so every local community knew where they got their salt, either where they made it themselves, where they mined it out, where they got it from the ocean, how much it cost. Everything was the most important things. And now nobody knows, unless you're buying like a special salt, like a Hawaiian salt or Himalayan salt. You don't know where your salt comes from. You don't even think about what it costs, because we've got all these other different ways to preserve food now. And you can buy it so cheaply, and it is still very important. You need, like, if you have no electrolytes in your diet, you're not going to be doing great. Like, people should, if they don't have some sort of issue preventing them from doing it, should be putting a little bit of salt in their food, and they should be getting iodine and stuff like that. So, like, you're 100% right. Some of the things that are truly incredibly valuable for life, like, people don't think about where their water comes from apart from the sink. People don't think about where their food comes apart from the grocery store. We kind of lose sight of those. But you know where you go and you buy your entertainment. You know. You might know exactly who produces your entertainment. You might follow the person who produces your entertainment because you want more of what that person has,
And, I mean, the person that works at the plant that provides us with the water makes $40,000-$50,000 a year, where a pop music star makes millions of dollars in their lifetime, or whatever, and that person will never see that type of income. And that's a little bit disproportionate. I'm not saying that person that entertains us shouldn't make a good living. I think that the person that's working at the engineer that is working at the plant probably should be elevated in status a little bit. They should be.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, an argument for that. I think you also have to think about scale. Like, if we say, hey, look at how much money Taylor Swift makes. Taylor Swift is also the top 0.001% of artists.
Yes.
A ton of them make no money. It's a more akin to like the CEO of Nestle type of deal when you start thinking about that scale. But you're 100% right that just in general, a lot of our essential workers are underpaid.
Right.
Like I think it's I think I struggle some with the comparison to like other like entertainment. Like, oh, a movie star makes so much money. There's such a fine percentage of people, and people are willingly paying them the money directly by consuming the service. But 100%, teachers need to be getting paid more. You know, anyone that works in utilities needs to be getting paid more, because if those infrastructures fail, it's a huge problem.
Right.
Like, we need to be paying higher wages so we incentivize better educated workers who are staying longer, who are more taken care of. You know, there's again, on me deep diving into weird podcasts, I was watching a guy who works in like a dam electrical facility, like a really old one, and the dam was built like 120 years ago, and that dude, to go like repair a machine, is like going through pipes that are barely as big as he is to like get inside this machine to do something.
Yeah.
And like he's probably not paid enough to do that.
No.
Like, not only is it a strenuous job, it's a dirty job, it's a dangerous job, because they oftentimes can't shut down the machine to do the thing, right? So like he's kind of like, it's supposed to be safe, but it's a 120-year-old machine. If it suddenly is not safe one day, he's not going to know till he's down there.
Exactly.
And then that might be that's a dangerous situation for him to be in, you know. And he's like supplementing his income with YouTube, which he shouldn't have to do. He should be getting paid enough to just, you know, rock out.
Well, that's my exact point. It's not that Taylor Swift hasn't done something to use, because she was your example. Taylor Swift hasn't done something to earn a lot of money. She has really honed her craft. She knows how to provide a lot of entertainment to people and stuff like that. The industry that promotes her and says that she is super important has basically created this kind of false dichotomy that she is more important. You should give her thousands of dollars to buy a ticket and stuff like that, versus the water that you get, which you can get for 10 cents a gallon or something like that.
True. On the level of need and importance, you're 100% right.
Right.
That like Taylor Swift, no matter how entertaining and successful and, you know, listen, she gets a month on Spotify or whatever like that, she is not ultimately important when we start talking about other things like food, water, electricity, shelter, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're homeless but Taylor Swift is still around, you are in a much worse situation than if Taylor Swift decided to retire and you still have your house.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So, like, it's just a matter of perspective, is all I'm saying. Not so much that we should decrease her salary and give that money to someone else. I don't think that that's necessarily a good way of looking at it. But definitely, these other people should get, you know, more. If we can spend less and give more, we should.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a whole different topic. I just wanted to make sure I qualified what I'm going to say, because I have gone on record and saying we shouldn't do this and we should do this.
Gotcha.
However, music, I spend a lot of money. I just bought Ghost's new album. You know, I like Ghost. I listened to a couple of their songs. I watched Right Here, Right Now, which, if you're into cheesy, like campy, almost spooky, like films, and then you're also into concert films and well done ones, like well done concert films, Ghost Right Here, Right Now, awesome. If that's not your thing, don't watch it, because it won't be for you and you won't like it. But it's got some humor. It's got some like great stuff that kind of goes along with it. But that is a moment that I got to have. I own the movie. You know, I bought the Blu-ray. I bought the album, you know, and I sat down and I listened to it, and it's a really good album. It's a really good live album. It's very well recorded. It's very well produced. I think it won an award for, you know, just like the way it was produced, because you can't see the cameras. Like normally on like things like that, you see the people in the background like running around and stuff like that. For the most part, they made it over 2 days, and like you don't see the camera.
Oh, cool.
Anyways, got to sit down, listen to that one night, have like just kind of like a disconnect time. Didn't have like a whole bunch of pop-ups, you know, like watch the movie. And that was an experience that I got to have. I was able to disconnect, decompress, separate myself from all my worries and cares in the world, all the things that were on top of me, and just kind of let my mind sit at ease. And I do that like once a year. You know, like during the Christmas time, I'll come and I'll take time off work. I take, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks off work. During that time period, I don't do anything that I consider to be stressful, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Like if you know, one of my kids went to the hospital, or
Yeah.
somebody got sick, or one of the dogs got hurt, something bad happened in the house. Deal with that. I'm not saying that, but
Hmm.
um, do a lot of brewing, take time off, plan Christmas events and gifts, and do fun projects, and read and play video games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This last time, I think I did most of Baldur's Gate 3 over that break. Just things like that,
Hmm.
just to kind of get the out.
Yeah.
And I think just as doing this for several years, that is so good for your soul. It's so good for your mind. It helps you to realize things, and I think whatever your way of doing that is, you should do that. Like whether you're a person that works in law enforcement or tech or in the military or a
Hmm.
firefighter or an engineer at a plant, you should be taking some time off, because whatever you're doing is important enough to society that you're doing it. You need to do some self-care for yourself. And a lot of that media and entertainment plays into that, because that gives us those like breaks from the reality of life, from when things are on top of you. So, you know, not having a streaming app that I'm
Hmm.
listening to and being connected and having notifications and reading, Insta book, face, gram, or
Yeah.
whatever, and like being on the talk, or any of that stuff, just disconnecting from all that and sitting down and putting on a pair of headphones and listening to a CD that you pick up and put into a CD player, and you listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall from beginning to end, as the band like kind of made, or the White Album by the Beatles, or like I said, Ghost's new Skeleton,
Hmm.
CD or something like that. Sit down, have yourself a setup, take an hour of your day or a week or whatever, and you're just there in that moment. And there's something beautiful and relaxing and grounding in that, and I think it adds to the quality of your life. And then you can kind of spread that out to other people. Like you don't have to just hold that in.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That was just the main.
No, it's 100%. You do have to do stuff like that. I go the opposite direction. I generally try not to take like a big chunk of time off. What I like to do is take a lot of like 3 day weekends or 4 day weekends. In fact, we're coming up on the summer. I'm going to do that over the summer. I'm probably going to take 1 week off near the beginning because I'm going to take my daughter somewhere. But then it's just a bunch of 3 day weekends. So that way, if we want to go do something, boom, we've got 3 days, because sometimes like a single day trip's a little hard to pull off and stuff like that. Just to give yourself that time to let those like stresses in your body reduce. I think everybody's different in that. Like some people really do like enjoy the long month, and that might be something I actually started to enjoy more. I tried that once and it did not go great because I just had enough like life stress
Yeah.
that like suddenly the life stresses became more important. And I got a ton done in that month. That was great, but I still didn't spend it relaxing.
Right.
Whereas like a 3 day weekend, I feel like anybody can really do, because you can like whatever that important thing in your personal life is, it can wait 1 day,
Yeah.
and you can just have one extra day on that weekend.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think the amount of time that this is just what I do. You
Yeah,
know.
no, no, no. But
Yeah.
I'm agreeing on the point that like I think everybody needs to find whatever arrangement works well for them to make sure they're doing their self care,
Right.
because it's important. Like, sure, jobs are important. You need your food, you need your water, you need all those other things, but you can't get those things if you are not also taking care of yourself. Eventually, your body breaks down, your mind breaks down. Like if you don't let yourself recover, it's like going to the gym. Like people know, don't go to the gym and lift heavy every single day on every
Right.
muscle group, right? Like you have to give your body time to rest.
Hmm.
Um, you wouldn't go run a marathon every single day because you have to give yourself a rest. People understand that, but like your brain needs rest too.
Hmm.
Like mentally, you also have to give yourself those breaks, because if you don't, you eventually just become strung out, and you can just find yourself in a position where you can't calm down very much anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like stress-induced PTSD is a thing.
It is. It is absolutely a thing. And as a person with PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm like putting that out there, you don't want it.
No.
Just putting that out there right there. Like you definitely do not want that. It is awful. it does all sorts of bad things to you, and like there's different levels of it, but you don't want it. It can affect your body in so many different ways. So yeah, don't let yourself get to the place where you're doing this thing that you're so busy that you're always interacting with something that's always grabbing your attention, because that doesn't let your mind relax. Don't get yourself in a place like that. Now, the topic here, I know we strayed like into the mental health. This is about that. This is why it's about that. The topic here that I'd kind of started, or the idea was the intentional interaction with media. Like you get something. You can't do that with an app on your smartphone. You can set up something like, even like an iPod doesn't necessarily do gapless playback all the time.
Yeah.
So having a CD or a vinyl where you just drop that in, you have a nice sound system or a nice set of headphones that you're listening to it on, and you're just listening to the whole thing from beginning to end. Or you're watching a movie from beginning to end, or you're doing this, but it's something that you've set down. It's not on a device that you're, being interrupted with or anything like that. Like, you are there in the moment with this thing. There's an intentionality that comes with that, and you don't get that experience with some of the ways that we've set ourselves up to.
100%. Like, well, even if you set yourself up great, like there's so many things to invade that space. Like, I was out with a friend yesterday. We're bar hopping downtown. We spent like 5 hours together. It was really nice. It was a great afternoon. But every time my phone went off and I had to check it, I was like, ugh. It's like I hated every notification.
Yeah.
And it's none of them were ultimately very important. Like, maybe one of them was, but like, I understand in today's world you have to like keep your phone on you most of the time. Like, things happen.
Right.
Like, your phone is now how people get to you, and the world moves fast. Like, sometimes you really are going to get like an important phone call or an important message or an important email.
And people don't understand, like they did in the 90s and early 2000s, where you didn't always have a phone on you, that, hey, you have to wait till Bob gets back home and then he'll call you back.
Well, not even to that degree. I mean, you can get calls that are truly, now because there's so much communication, things are more time sensitive. Like, I feel like if something bad was going to happen to you, like let's say something went wrong with your electricity and your electricity was going to get shut off. You got like a message in the mail letting you know like 2 weeks before it happened that, hey, this is going to happen. Whereas like nowadays you're getting an email, or like when that thing a couple years ago with Amazon happened, I just got a random email from Amazon that was like, you owe me $18,000.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the world? Like, that became a sudden urgent thing. And the only reason they told me was because my card declined. Like, they were just already going to like bill me for it. It's like, yeah, you get important stuff. Or like a family member's sick, boom, they're going to call you. They expect you to be there.
But that's kind of the point that I'm making. Like, we moved at a slower pace, and like
we
20,
did.
30 years ago.
From that perspective, yes, we moved slower.
We didn't have, like, we weren't always necessarily connected, and there's an argument to be made as to whether or not it's necessary. But regardless of that, we've set ourselves up to be in that, and so how do you take a break from that?
Yep, exactly. I'll say one of the things I did, which has helped, is I went through every single one of my notifications and I set up custom notifications. When I get a message, my device only makes a noise if it's like a close friend. Like, if you message me, I get a notification. If my wife messages me, I get a notification. If a couple people in our D&D group message me, I get a notification. If it's anybody else, I'll get it and it'll vibrate, but it won't make a noise.
Right.
Things like that can help. But you're right. I mean, 4 or 5 notifications yesterday. Hated every single one of them. I looked at and like, because it is that it like breaks you out of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm starting to consider that like maybe I should be putting my phone just like straight always in vibrate when I go and do something. Like, instead of just only like when you're in a movie, or like when the noise would be entirely disruptive to other people. Because like I got a notification from you. I'll use that one for example. You let me know the podcast topics were updated. Great thing I needed to know. But I could have known that when I got home.
Right, you didn't need to know it. I didn't have it. There was no emergency.
There was no emergency, and that's not
like, hey
like,
man, let's talk for a little bit.
Exactly, and that's not your fault. That's not my fault. But what did happen is I got a message from my wife, so I got a noise, and then a minute later I got a message from you, and I was like, okay, 2 notifications back to back. This could be important. And then I checked, and neither one of them were that important. I turned them off. Then I could get back to having that conversation, you know. But you're right, it does break apart that relaxation, and there's no scientific backing for this. This is my personal opinion, but I think relaxation is the same thing with sleep. Like sleep, you enter states of like deeper sleep and REM sleep, which is where your real rest is occurring. So like if you're somebody that wakes up 2 or 3 times at night, even if you get the same number of hours, you get way worse sleep because you got the interruptions. And I personally feel like relaxing is the same way. If you sit down to relax for an hour and a half, but you got interrupted 4 times, even if like that's one total minute of time lost, right? Like none of the interruptions were big. Just like you just had to check your phone 4 times. You are not as relaxed if you got an hour and a half and nothing happened.
I believe there are studies psychologically about how that affects your brain, and
I'm saying I'm not quoting any of them. This is my personal opinion, but yeah.
And I think there is some scientific evidence to back you up that, and it's more about the constant pull of things and serotonin versus another brain chemical that happens. And so basically it's like a Pavlov dog's effect.
Yeah.
You know, when you're notified constantly, it sets you on edge, but it also like rewards you with little bits of dopamine. That dopamine was the thing that I was looking for, and gives you cortisol. So you increase your cortisol level, and when you're de-stressing and relaxing and things like that, you're decreasing the cortisol level. But I'm only halfway quoting the study. I'm pretty sure that there is one out there that says something like that. I might not be 100% right. I don't have it right in front of me, and I haven't read an article about it today. So don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure there is something like that.
It makes sense. I mean, because your body does have to, like, we're hormone-driven creatures.
Yeah.
Like, when something happens, you release a hormone to tell your body what to do about it. So I could definitely see that the interruption causes some heightened level of stress that lasts longer than the interruption itself.
Yes, it does. I know that. I know that is true. And there is a dopamine effect of getting notifications and constantly having your. I know that too, because that's the same thing that algorithmically happens with like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. Looking at that constantly gives you dopamine hits, and it's little dopamine hits, but it becomes more addictive every time you do it. So when you're trying to come off that high, it's very hard. But if you get into a rhythm to where you can, then your brain starts to relax, and you start to like get flooded with all the other good, chemicals that you need to be able to like be healthy. Anyways, so that's. I don't have anything else to say other than be more intentional about your experiences. If that's with media or with games or with time spent with friends. I mean, we have like a once a month game night. That was last night, and we sat down. A lot of us disconnected from our phones and just played games, and that was nice. Let's check this beer out and see what it's like warmer.
Yeah, I've been sipping it. It's been getting warmer. I don't know. The caramel does come out more, but I think having more caramel does not make up for now. It's just a worse beer because it's a warm porter.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Although it brings out some more interesting flavors. So the caramel is definitely forward when it's warmer. I don't know how cold yours is, but mine's like probably about 55 degrees, somewhere in that range. I don't have a thermometer. I need to bring a thermometer up here.
Yeah, because I drank it about 10 minutes ago, then held it in my hand to heat it up more. So mine's probably closer to like 70. And I didn't like them in either stage of warm. It's getting worse the warmer it is, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's somewhere around, because I was doing the same thing. It's somewhere around 45 degrees, 50 degrees. There was like a very pleasant balance of caramel to porter. So I think that what this beer is it needs the perfect temperature or the perfect range of temperature to be like at that, like you can get a lot of the caramel. Right now I've got interesting flavors. I would drink it at this just to explore the flavors while I'm sitting down and kind of hanging out and stuff like that. I wouldn't buy it to
drink that warm.
Yeah. If it was given to me, I would do that. If it was at this temperature, like I'd kind of keep it. I don't hate it, but I imagine at 70 degrees, 65 to 70 degrees.
It's going the other direction.
Yeah, this is going to start becoming more bitter. It's going to start bringing out all those like weird tannic flavors.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be more tannic. It's going to be becoming more forwardly acidic. Yeah,
I do like it. I do like it right here. It's like pleasant, but not perfect. But it's got just a little bit too much bitterness. So, anyways, it's not one of those that you should warm up. Is basically my point.
Yeah.
So, anyways, this has been Season 8, Episode 4 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. A little bit longer than we intended, but it was a good conversation. Next time, we've got some interesting video game topics. This episode should come out on May 5th, 2025. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.